No one expected trouble. On paper, the joint exercise looked routine. British SAS operators, Filipino jungle warfare specialists, one forest, one task, one day. The goal was simple: reach a long-abandoned research site hidden deep in the Sierra Madre mountains, recover a sealed metal case, and return before sundown. Navigation, coordination, speed, nothing dramatic. The British team arrived confident, relaxed, professional. They had trained in jungles across the world, South America, Africa, Southeast Asia. To them, this was just another forest. The Filipino soldiers chose the location. Not the thickest jungle, not the wettest, not the darkest. But when one SAS operator casually asked what locals called the area, the Filipino commander answered only with a faint smile. "You'll see." The British laughed. The Filipinos didn't. The first steps into the forest felt ordinary, almost comforting. Sunlight spilled through the canopy in wide golden beams, cutting through the leaves like spotlights. The ground was firm beneath their boots. The air was warm, humid, but nothing unfamiliar. To the British SAS, this was routine. They adjusted straps, checked radios, glanced at their watches. One of them smirked. "Feels like every other jungle we've trained in." Another nodded. "Same smell, same heat, same bugs." They laughed lightly, relaxed, already moving faster than the plan required. Their formation was clean, confident, professional. They spoke openly as they walked, calling out bearings, confirming distances, joking about how quickly they'd be back before nightfall. They trusted their equipment. Maps were laminated, compasses calibrated, GPS trackers synced. Every step was measured by technology. Behind them, the Filipino soldiers followed, but not in the same way. They didn't chat. They didn't rush. They didn't even look straight ahead most of the time. Instead, their eyes moved constantly. To the ground, to the trees, to the spaces between branches. One paused briefly to touch a leaf, rubbing it between his fingers. Another tilted his head, listening, not to voices but to the forest itself. Their boots landed softly, carefully, as if they were guests rather than intruders. The difference was subtle, but important. The British moved like they were passing through. The Filipinos moved like they were being watched. At one point, an SAS operator glanced back and joked, "Relax, it's just trees." A Filipino soldier met his eyes. He didn't smile. 5 minutes in, the forest changed. Not abruptly, not dramatically. It simply withdrew. The birds stopped first. One moment they were there, chirping, fluttering, calling overhead. The next, nothing, as if someone had closed a door. Then the insects vanished. No buzzing, no rustling, no distant hum. Even the sound of footsteps seemed muted, swallowed by the ground. The SAS didn't notice immediately. They kept walking, kept talking. But gradually, their voices sounded too loud, too sharp. One soldier slowed and frowned. "Hold on." The others stopped. "What?" He looked around, uneasy. "Listen." They did. Nothing. No wind through leaves, no animal movement, no background noise at all, just breathing, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. One of them laughed, but it came out thin. "Guess the wildlife doesn't like visitors." No one laughed back. A Filipino soldier whispered, barely moving his lips, "This is where the forest listens." The SAS glanced at him. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. The air felt heavier now, thicker, as if it had weight. Sweat cooled too quickly on their skin. Shadows seemed deeper, darker than before. One SAS operator scanned the trees and muttered, "Feels like something's off." Another replied, trying to sound casual, "Just your imagination." But his hand had tightened on his rifle. The Filipinos slowed their pace deliberately. One raised a hand, signaling quiet. The British noticed then. The jokes stopped. The confidence dimmed. Because silence in a jungle isn't normal, and everyone there knew it. The stone marker appeared without warning, half-buried, moss-covered, carved decades ago, maybe longer. The SAS team leader slowed and raised a fist. "Marking point," he said, confirming position. He glanced at the map, then at the compass. Everything checked out. They passed the marker and continued forward, boots crunching softly against dry leaves. The path narrowed, then widened again. Sunlight shifted angles, sliding across the forest floor like something alive. 5 minutes later, they stopped again. The same stone marker stood ahead. Same height, same crack running diagonally across its face, same chipped corner near the base. The team leader frowned. "That's not right." He turned in a slow circle, scanning the trees. "No turns," he muttered. "We didn't double back." One SAS operator chuckled uneasily. "Maybe there's another one." The Filipino soldiers didn't move. One of them stepped closer, eyes fixed on the stone. He knelt, brushed dirt away from the base, and touched the carved edge with 2 fingers. "It's the same one," he said quietly. The SAS leader shook his head. "That's impossible." They moved again, this time deliberately, counting steps, watching bearings, making sure no one deviated even a few degrees. 10 minutes later, the stone appeared again. This time, no one laughed. A tight silence fell over the group. Radios crackled softly, sounding too loud in the still air. The SAS leader exhaled sharply. "We walked straight." No one argued. The Filipinos exchanged calm, knowing looks. One placed his palm flat against a nearby tree trunk and closed his eyes. "The forest folded," he said. The SAS stared at him. "Folded? What do you mean, folded?" He opened his eyes slowly. "The paths don't stay where you leave them." The SAS leader pulled out the map again, flattened it carefully, rechecked landmarks, compared it to the compass. North was still north. According to the map, they should have been moving downhill by now. Instead, the ground felt subtly higher, slanted the wrong way. One operator pointed. "That vine, wasn't it facing the other direction earlier?" Another nodded. "And that tree. I remember that split." But the map insisted they were wrong. The compass insisted they were right. The forest disagreed with both. A Filipino soldier stepped forward and pointed to several hanging vines. "Look at how they lean," he said. The SAS squinted. "They were angled south earlier." The Filipino continued. "Now they're turned west." The SAS leader laughed once, sharp and brief. "Vines don't rotate." "No," the Filipino replied calmly. "But we do, without noticing." A quiet chill moved through the group. The Filipino commander clapped his hand softly, not loudly, not sharply, just enough to gather attention. "We stop trusting paper," he said. The SAS frowned. "Then what do we trust?" The commander gestured to the forest around them. "Things that don't pretend." He crouched and pressed his ear close to the ground. After a moment, he stood. "Water," he said. "Far off. That's real." They turned toward the faint sound. But as they moved, the trickle shifted. Faded. Reappeared somewhere else. Branches cracked above them, not from footsteps, but from height. Something tall brushing past without breaking anything. One SAS operator whispered, "That's not an animal." The Filipino commander spoke softly. "Don't name it." "Why?" "Names give direction. Direction gives permission." The SAS swallowed hard. They moved slower now. Maps folded away. Compasses ignored. For the first time, elite soldiers trained to dominate terrain were letting the terrain decide where they went. And the forest noticed. Ahead, the jungle thickened into something unnatural. What had been open ground slowly closed in, vines knotting together, branches interlocking, leaves overlapping until the path simply ended. It wasn't a dead end in the usual sense. It felt deliberate, as if the forest itself had decided they'd gone far enough. The SAS moved first. Instinct took over. Hands grabbed vines, boots dug in, branches snapped under force, leaves tore free, twigs cracked sharply in the silence. But the jungle pushed back. Vines tightened instead of loosening. Branches bent but refused to break cleanly. Each step forward felt heavier than the last, as if the ground itself resisted their weight. One SAS operator cursed under his breath. "This thing's fighting us." The Filipinos raised their hands. The commander stepped forward calmly. "Stop!" The SAS hesitated, breathing hard, arms scratched and wet with sap. The commander didn't force his way through. He stood still. Then he lifted his hand and tapped the nearest tree. Once, lightly. Then again, listening to the sound travel through the wood. His head tilted slightly, eyes half closed, as if the jungle was speaking in a language only he understood. He reached out, not grabbing, not pulling, just touching. Slowly, carefully, he lifted a curtain of vines aside, not ripping them, not breaking them, just enough. Behind them, a narrow opening appeared, so narrow it looked impossible to pass through, hidden in plain sight. "This was here the whole time," one SAS soldier whispered. The commander nodded. "The forest shows paths." He said softly, "It doesn't like them taken." He held the vines open as if opening a door. "Be respectful," he added. "Don't take what you don't need." The SAS exchanged uneasy glances. Then, one by one, they followed, turning sideways, lowering their heads, careful not to tear a single leaf. The moment the last man passed through, the vines slowly fell back into place, sealing the path behind them. No one spoke, because for the first time, the message was clear. This wasn't terrain to conquer. It was something to be allowed through. Inside, the temperature dropped. The air grew heavy. The ground softened beneath their boots. Mist hovered just above the soil, curling around their legs like smoke. One SAS operator froze. "Did you see that?" "See what?" "Movement behind that tree." Another nodded. "Tall. Too tall." The Filipinos didn't look. "Don't watch the edges," one whispered. "That's how it distracts you." "That what?" Silence. A low vibration rolled through the forest. Not sharp, not sudden, deep. It didn't come from any single direction. It felt like it rose from the ground itself, traveling up through roots and soil before settling in the air around them. Leaves quivered on their branches. Loose dirt shifted under boots. The sound pressed against their chests, subtle but heavy, like pressure before a storm. One SAS operator inhaled sharply. Another swallowed hard. Weapons came up without a word. Barrels tracked the trees. Fingers hovered near triggers. Training kicked in. The Filipino commander raised his hand, steady, controlled. "Keep them down," he said. The SAS hesitated. The vibration lingered, pulsing once, twice, slow and deliberate. "What is that sound?" someone whispered. The commander didn't answer immediately. He listened, head tilted, eyes scanning the canopy, then the ground. "Sometimes," he said finally, "it's wind." The word sometimes hung in the air, because no wind moved the leaves, no breeze touched their skin. The vibration faded, but the pressure remained. A SAS operator muttered, barely audible, "That didn't feel like wind." The commander didn't correct him. He only said, "Quieter now. This place doesn't always need a reason." No one raised their weapon again, not because they felt safe, but because they understood. Whatever made that sound wasn't something steel could stop. The trees opened into a clearing. In the center stood the outpost, rusted, leaning, swallowed by vines. No birds, no insects. Nothing alive dared cross the clearing. Inside, on a metal table, sat the case. Untouched, as if waiting. The SAS leader gestured. In and out. The moment the first boot touched the floor, a footstep sounded above them. Not theirs, heavy, slow. Another step. The Filipinos drew their bolos without a word. The SAS raised weapons towards the stairs. Lights flickered, then died. "Do not run," the Filipino commander whispered. "Do not shout. Eyes on the exit." The dragging sound followed them as they retrieved the case. They left without looking back. The moment they re-entered the forest, fog poured in. Thick, white, alive. Visibility dropped to a few feet. Shapes shifted inside it. Long, bent, wrong. A massive handprint appeared on a tree trunk, far too large to be human. The SAS breathed fast. The Filipinos moved slowly, hands raised. "If you run," the commander said, "it follows your fear." The hum returned, stronger now. The forest seemed to watch. The Filipinos formed a tight circle around the SAS. They guided them step by step. "Stop. Breathe. Don't look there. Wait." It felt less like navigation, more like ritual. Paths appeared, then vanished. Fog parted, then closed. The SAS followed blindly, completely dependent. Suddenly the pressure lifted. Birds returned. Wind whispered again. The fog thinned. They had crossed the edge of the forest. The SAS collapsed, exhausted. The Filipinos remained standing. "This is why jungle training isn't just skill," the commander said quietly. "It's respect." The SAS leader wiped sweat from his face. "What was that place?" The Filipino didn't answer directly. "It's older than maps," he said, "and it remembers who listens." When they emerged, the sun was already low. Reporters noticed the shaken expressions. Someone asked, "How was the exercise?" A British soldier answered softly, "It wasn't the training." Another added, "We wouldn't have survived without them." Footage later leaked. Fog, silence, Filipino soldiers guiding calmly while elite operators followed. It went viral. Not because of danger, but because of humility. They arrived confident, they left changed, and they never laughed again.